2021. And I think comic books had like a crash in like around 99. A lot of stuff, Beanie Babies comics, a lot of other stuff like crashed around 1999. And I don't think
99, 2000, right?
Yeah.
2000, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it had much necessarily to do with like the .com bubble. Maybe a little bit because maybe some people were like in both, but it seemed like it may have been like its own thing. Because I'm getting into other collectible markets and trying to see how things work. Because I know, like for example, comic books for example, comic books has been pretty strong though, just because of the Marvel movies and stuff like that. But when at the start of the big sports card boom, comics were pretty stagnant for the most part though. And then they started going up when Gary Vee was talking about Marvel cards. And people started getting into Marvel, and then people started getting into comic books or whatever. And I wonder like how much does this have to do with like Gary Vee talking about like, oh, I'm gonna buy this, and they just noticed. Same for content creators too. Whatever comes out of Gary Vee's mouth, I've noticed like that narrative. Content creators just start talking about it as it's almost as is law in a sense.
That's an interesting point. Going to 99, 2000. Interesting point. The Federal Reserve, I think, was aggressively raising interest rates during the .com bubble. So that's just one point. That's maybe I could do a video on that or do it during a live stream to discuss more about it. Now, in terms of Gary Vee and his impact on collectibles and comic books, I do remember the Action Comics? One of the very famous. I'm not a comic book guy, but I think I read that one of the comic books, I think it was maybe last year, it sold for over $2 million. It's the most in demand comic, one of the most in demand. So yeah, you could say on the low end, Gary Vee may have an impact, but on the high end, like you have no impact of influential marketing. I mean, just look at the recent sale of the Honus Wagner, right? You've seen a lot of, you could say, people always say, hey, I'm negative, this and that, despite me being negative and other channels that are much larger that are, you could say, negative. You still had that Honus Wagner card sell for $7.2 million. The Mickey Mantle card is going to sell, the SGC 9.5, over $5 million.
True.
And it could break the Honus Wagner sale. So yes, influencer marketing may artificially bump up the price, just like you saw with the Fleer 86 card. But in terms of longer term trends of collectibles that you could say have intrinsic value, I don't consider Beanie Babies to have intrinsic value. There may be a few select Beanie Babies. I think if you were to sell some of them, they could be worth still thousands of dollars, but there's no intrinsic demand. Some people say that the Funko Pops that I collect, the sports ones, they believe that it has no intrinsic value, which, you know, everyone is entitled to their opinion. I just like collecting, you know, I have a Tom Brady, Edelman, Gronk Funko Pop, right? Bought it for 100 something bucks. It's $300, right? It's whatever the market price is, but you know, it is what it is.
So there's a couple things. So one, I'm actually going to be making more fringe stuff like the pop culture cards. That stuff is starting to come down. Apparently, Mark Zuckerberg has a sports card. He has like a little league card or whatever. That's like Pop 1 graded by SGC, and he signed. That's gonna be going to auction, and they're making an NFT of it. So I wonder what that's gonna sell for. And one of my thoughts was like, if this sells for a lot of money, you're gonna have a lot of people who are gonna be they're gonna be trying to, like, if there's like little league sports or whatever going on, or even high school, they're gonna be trying to make cards of all their players or whatever, and get them to sign them and maybe hold them and try to sell them or whatever. I don't know, like, what do you think about like the future of pop culture type cards? Um,
So Fanatics is going to be big in this hobby, as we
mhm,
know. And I've heard rumors that they've already, I'm not going to name names, but I've heard rumors that they've already have affiliations with some content creators.
mhm,
And once they come out with the licensing, it's going to be made official. So if you have a popular YouTuber or Instagram guy or gal, they may artificially hype up these cards. So there
mhm,
may be a stretch to be like, hey, look at this Mark Zuckerberg card. I mean, this is amazing card, right? And
mhm,
then they may come up with some other pop icon guys, maybe the Beatles, maybe Michael Jackson, maybe the list goes on and on. And then you could have that demand going towards these type of individuals. And it just depends what Fanatics is doing. I mean, could someone be buying the Mark Zuckerberg card? Sure, but I think it would be more in the lines of a famous celebrity, Elvis. Maybe they have, a triple
mhm,
logo man of Elvis, someone on the Beatles, Michael Jackson,
mhm.
something like that. And be like, oh, that's cool, right? And they may buy something like that. So,
Okay. Yeah, it's a you have. I'm a little skeptical of certain kind of pop culture cards, just because let's say even Elvis memorabilia.
yeah,
Um, there are a few things, very small things in the market that are maintaining their value or going up, but mostly everything else for Elvis is going down in price. And there's certain people who held it long term, um, maybe selling it for pennies of a dollar than what they bought it for. Just because a lot of younger generations don't care about Elvis like that. And even the perception of who Elvis was changes in a sense, and the narratives. Maybe it's like all this positive stuff, but then it's like maybe negative stuff about his character shines light on, and people look at it more like that. Um, so that's kind of like the concern for, because I just remember people were buying like Justin Bieber and Drake autograph cards and Jay-Z cards and stuff. And I think stuff for like millennials maybe um that's fine for a period of time. And maybe if the person transcends to like Gen Z, but if they don't, I guess I'm like skeptical whether people necessarily care about those cards. The you go ahead.
yeah, it just depends. And I think what drives the market for some of these cards, if you look at the Marvel PMGs, yes, they did look nice, but that was artificially hyped, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I believe some of these niche markets, I thought F1 was artificially hyped.
Mm-hmm.
I thought some people were pumping it up. So PMGs I thought were pumped up. And then now some people are getting into Disney cards, right? And once I saw some content creators going into Disney cards, I'm like, I have to sell a few 1930s Mickey Mouse cards because Golden was selling, and then PSA said, "Oh, we're starting to sell these." And then I see content creators, "Oh, I'm interested." And then I messaged one of the guys that I follow, Pink Analytics, and I'm like, "Dude, I'm about to sell some of this stuff." Once I
Mm-hmm.
see some content creators, when you could have bought these cards on the cheap, even during the hype of
Mm-hmm.
2020, 2021, no one was touching it. Now they're interested because they want to go to the what they believe is the least or the cheapest cards out there that no one's looking at. And then you influence it, and then all of a sudden, you could put interesting valuations on cards. Some Star Wars cards, I believe, had overvalued valuations.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I think there's that short time frame. If people have those cards and someone keeps on hyping it up, I would probably sell them. That's just me, but
That's true. Yeah, there's certain things that kind of got me. I One is like for people who are hyping up UFC cards. So I'm like a fan of UFC and I actually watch fights and stuff like that. Um, and I was like disturbed that people are hyping up UFC cards trying to buy UFC fighters just because if your argument is you only buy quarterbacks because everybody else gets hurt, um, you don't need to be buying UFC cards unless they're retired because like you're literally punching and kicking someone in the face, like you're choking. I like do Brazilian jiu-jitsu and I've done Taekwondo, so it's like it's like a really dangerous situation. Kind of, I don't know if you know, but like Conor McGregor like broke his leg in the middle of a fight or whatever. Yeah. And this is actually happening more often because I happened to Anderson Silva before. So yeah, it's like that kind of problem, and then also people are pumping Conor McGregor. That's the other thing. Like people are worried about players having these how do I say controversies in a sense, and you're always going to have athletes have them at some point. Cristiano Ronaldo had one. Kobe Bryant had his. Like there's going to be some popular athlete, whether they did it or not, depending on what it is, they're going to have this controversy. But like some people, I don't know, like Conor McGregor has done a bunch of stuff and been accused for a lot of stuff where it's like, I don't know if people really should be pumping his cards. I don't really care as much when people pump cards, but like there's some people it's just like him or John Jones who like, I don't know, he ran over a pregnant lady while high on cocaine. He steroids multiple times. The domestic violence thing with his fiance, and I think she's like pressed charges against him. Like that's a dude who's and he's like the best fighter ever, right? Like I guess him is George St. Pierre, but he's just like he could have been a LeBron James of like fighting, but like all his troubles like really messed up his reputation. But his talent is undeniable. Even he's gone from he's going to probably fight at the end of this year and probably make a lot of history. But it's like guys like that, Conor McGregor, same thing, where, I don't know, assault cases against him. He punched the old guy in the pub. He bought the club and then like forced the dude to basically ban the dude. Him getting in fights with celebrities. What he said about Dustin Poirier's wife. This is all that stuff. So I don't know like what's people's mindset on stuff like this when the controversy happened. Because I even saw the sports card investor bought like Deshaun Watson, and that's a not the best topic either.
Right. Yeah, I'll leave it on this note and we have to go. But in regarding to UFC, this opens up so many things I want to talk about. But there was this Khabib card that I bought, and it was $25 raw. I've talked about this a lot of times. 2013 Blue Refractor. It was numbered, and this was before the hype, before people got in, before people like Gary Vee said that what's his name, McGregor is on the top 5 of athletes should be on Mount Rushmore or whatever, which I found to be like, what?
Maybe popularity, but
popularity, yeah, he's definitely opened up that sport. There's no doubt about that. In terms of hype, yeah, he's great at it. But yeah, this Khabib card got for $25. I sent it to PSA Express grading before it shut down, and it came out a PSA 10. I don't know what the value of it is, but I bought that card before that hype, before everyone's like had eyeballs on it, because the population count is so low of especially the older players. So yeah, it's just so strange where you could have bought these cards literally 2 years ago, summer of 2020, during the pandemic, and you could have made a ridiculous amount of money. Now it was just pumped up, right? Everyone's
Hmm.
eyeballs like, hey, UFC, right? They're like, okay, basketball's too high, Mahomes cards are way too high. What's next? Let's look at weird sports. And then some people were looking at boxing, some people were looking at UFC. I was looking at some tennis. And then that's how it goes. So people are just trying to find the next biggest it not investment, but just the cheapest card out there. They're trying to be like hedge funds, and this is what happens. So anything that gets hyped up by these influencers, hopefully you have some of those cards, and when it's being hyped up like crazy and they're talking about it really excited, really giddy, that's not the time to buy, in my opinion. It's probably the
Hmm.
time to sell.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. I will like say I guess say this final note. Um, a lot of this actually happened in 86 to 94, especially in the 90s. They were pumping up NASCAR at that time and other kind of fringe sports. A lot of that stuff didn't last. UFC and I guess soccer has some promise decades from now, but it's still super early as far as for collectors because they're kind of the backbone and then
Right.
investors.
Indeed.